Worst parts of great games, Final Fantasy VII. And yes, we've talked about Final Fantasy VII here before, but today we're talking about a very specific version of the game. That being the version that is available on Steam. And to be clear, it is, by and large, the same game you played back on the original PlayStation, or one of the remasters on a more modern platform. But there is one aspect to it that is kind of unforgivable and makes this version borderline unplayable to me personally. This game has no support for ximput, meaning that if you're inclined to use an Xbox 360 or Xbox One controller to play this game, it is not supported. So it is like playing a PC game with a control pad back in 1993. This leads to several problems, as the Xbox controller has become the standard for most games on PC. Firstly, and most annoyingly to me personally, the game will recognize the analog stick, but not the D-pad. And as it is a JRPG, you spend a lot of time in menus for both combat and, well, everything else. And using an analog stick in menus is less than ideal. The other issue is that you will get prompts like this here, to press the cancel button, or the accept button, or whatever other button. Now, this may not seem like much of a problem, but later on when you have to do more complicated button presses during certain mini-games that are forced in Final Fantasy VII, this becomes a giant headache, as you'll be sitting there and you'll get things like, well, press button 1, now button 3, now button 4, and it's like, well, which button is which? I don't remember. And this version came out in July of 2013, long after ximput became the standard for PC games. So there really is no excuse for this kind of oversight on the part of Square Enix. And some people say, well, this isn't really an issue, it's a PC game. Why don't you just hunt down a mod that adds ximput? Or they say, well, why don't you get one of those programs that'll map keyboard inputs onto any controller? Because this is a game from 2013, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to make it not terrible. And I'd understand if maybe it launched without ximput, but then a week later they patched it in just because they forgot. But it's been nearly a decade at this point. It's clear that Square Enix just don't care. And to loop this back to the original video about Final Fantasy VII and its worst part, I've actually heard people white knight for this, saying that, oh no, this makes it more authentic to the original PC release of Final Fantasy VII. That was a buggy, unpatched nightmare that they released save files for to get you past overly glitched areas. No sane human being should have nostalgia for that version. So thank you kindly, Square Enix, for a second terrible version of Final Fantasy VII on PC. Please do like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends.